Masechet Horayot Daf Yod Daled, and the completion of this Masechet. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Peligu ba Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel ve'Rabbanan. Chad Amar Sinai Adif, ve'Chad Amar Oker Harim Adif. Rabbi Yochanan reports that there was a debate between Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel and the other sages. One of them said that Sinai, someone who's very knowledgeable, who knows all of the Torah, the oral law, they know it by heart, backwards and forwards, and can quote anything on a dime, that is the greatest type of sage. Whereas the other said, no, one who can uproot mountains, meaning someone who has great analytical skills, can figure out one thing from another, can ask difficult questions, can solve difficult problems. That's the best type of knowledge, not just memorization. Okay, memorization, if you have a computer, then you don't need to memorize. So memorization, that's just the raw data, but being able to process that data and figure out conceptually how things work, that is the greatest type of sage. You can uproot a whole mountain. Now, they're both using analogies from a mountain. Sinai, meaning the place of Torah giving, right? To have the original pristine data, the words that were said at Sinai, that's the best, or to be able to uproot them and say, argue the opposite, argue this way and that way, and bring many arguments and proofs. That's the best thing. Rav Yosef Sinai Rabba Oker Harim. Now, some generations later, this is in the third generation of Babylonian Amoraim. Rav Yosef was known to be a Sinai. He knew everything by heart. Rabba had such insight, very sharp in his reasoning. He was an uprooter of mountains. Shalchu letaman eze mehem kodem. And it was time to choose a Rosh Yeshiva, and they didn't know who to choose, so they sent a message from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, who should become the head of the academy. Shalchu lehu Sinai Adif, and Eretz Yisrael sent back the one who memorizes his best. Rav Yosef should be the chief. As the master said, everybody needs the owner of wheat. The wheat is the raw material, and if you don't have raw material, then you can't make anything. Doesn't matter if you're the best baker in the world. If you don't have flour, you won't be able to do anything. And therefore, everybody needs the memorization, needs to know all of the Mishnayot and the Baraitot and the Midrashim, and to have all that raw material. And then, people can do what they want with it. But without the raw material, it doesn't matter how great your insight is. And therefore, they recommended Rav Yosef. And in fact, in many, many sources, we see that in Eretz Yisrael, memorization was considered the highest degree of knowledge. In Bavel, generally the opposite. It was the person who can ask the best questions, who can figure out proofs and answers and one thing from another and give many different proofs this way and that way was considered the highest form of knowledge. So they asked Eretz Yisrael and they said Rav Yosef. However, Rav Yosef did not accept the position. He said, no, Rabba is here. Rabba is greater than me in his reasoning ability. And Rav Yosef says, no, I'm not going to go first. So Malach Rabba Esrin v'Tarteshenin v'Adar Malach Rav Yosef. Rabba was the head of the yeshiva for 22 years. And after he passed, then Rav Yosef became the Rosh Yeshiva. V'chol sheneh de Malach Rabba, Rav Yosef afilu umana lebete lachalif. And all of the time, when Rabba was the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Yosef would not even accept for himself any public honor, even for the bloodletter to come to a home. Most people would go to the bloodletter, but if it was a very important person, the bloodletter would make a home visit. And Rav Yosef refused to allow the bloodletter to come to his home, that it shouldn't even look like to anybody that he was trying to overpass Rabbah and take honor and be Rosh Yeshiva. So that's how humble he was. Now in the next generation, this is now the fourth generation of Amoraim and Bavel. You have Abaye and Rava, the famous, always debating each other, and also Rabbi Zera and Rabba Matana. They were sitting and they said, we need someone who will be the head of this group, who is going to be the next Rosh Yeshiva. So they said, we'll make a challenge. Anyone who can propose a thesis and it will not be refuted, that will be the Rosh Yeshiva. You see already here, they are saying not the one who memorized the most. Let's test everybody's memory. Can you recite this Masechet and that Midrash? But rather, the one who can defend a position against all arguments, the best reasoning ability, that's the one who deserves to be the Rosh Yeshiva. And so they all presented a thesis, and every one of the sages' theses was rejected, was refuted, except for that of Abaye. Abaye showed himself to be the greatest. Rabba, who was still alive, and he was the previous Rosh Yeshiva, he saw that Abaye was raising his head. He saw that he had advanced and was worthy of being the next Rosh Yeshiva. And so he gave it over to him, and he called him by his first name, Nachmani. He said, open up your lecture. By saying that, it's basically appointing to him to be the Rosh Yeshiva. This is the main lecture that only the Rosh Yeshiva would give. So Rabba, by saying to Abaye, you give the lecture, is handing over the baton. You are the next Rosh Yeshiva. A question was brought up between Rabbi Zera and Rabba bar Rav Matana. Which of them is greater? They had differences. Rabbi Zera harif umakshe. Rabbi Zera had very penetrating questions. He could ask questions that nobody else could ask. Rabba bar Rav Matana matun umasik. Mai teko. Rabba bar Rav Matana, he had more moderate, not so sharp, not such sharp questions, but he could come up with solutions. So what's better? What's more important in the learning process? Coming up with the questions or being able to come up with a solution? And this itself was a matter of debate. But you see that the debate moved from Sinai and Oker Harim. There, previously, is it better to memorize or to have reason and insight? And that, in Eretz Yisrael, they said memorizing. But you see in Bavel, already, they preferred reasoning. And then within reasoning, which is the best? The reasoning that's required to ask a great question. Sometimes a great question, that's really what's important. You have to just know what to focus on. What is the matter at hand? What is the essential problem here? Once you ask the right question, then, you work to resolve it. So sometimes the question is actually the most important thing. So should that person be the head, or should it be the one who doesn't ask the number one question, but is able to come up with a reasoned conclusion? And this is a proper thing to continue to debate. Hadran Allah Kohen Mashiach Uselik Allah Masechet Horayot Chazakim Uberuchim, to all those who have completed the entire Talmud Bavli for Masechet Nezikin. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.